Frank and his wife Leo visited the hospital for an ultrasound appointment. Leo was pregnant, and they were both filled with anticipation. After the appointment, they returned home to a shocking scene. Their house was in complete disarray, with everything scattered. Leo grew anxious because this was the second time such an incident had happened, and it always seemed to target their home specifically. Later, Frank met with Ben at a coffee shop. Ben asked if they had received the key, but Frank replied that he did not think they had. The conversation left him unsettled and full of questions. While working with a colleague to monitor a building, Frank experienced a sudden mishap. The rope he was using snapped, and he narrowly avoided a deadly fall. It became clear that someone had intentionally sabotaged the equipment. Determined to find the underlying cause of things, Frank spotted a suspicious figure nearby and decided to follow him. Unfortunately, the man managed to escape. Fearing for Leo's safety, Frank rushed home in a panic. He was relieved to find her safe, and though his worries lingered, he allowed himself to rest for the night. In another scene, an older man with white hair named Victor, the attacker, sat in a car. Without hesitation, he pulled out a gun and shot the driver, killing him instantly. The cold expression on his face hinted at something sinister. Meanwhile, at home, Frank was searching frantically. He climbed to the top of a shelf and found a key hidden inside a bottle. He quickly retrieved it and decided to hide it in the wash basin. Just as he finished, Leo walked in and caught him off guard. She asked what he was hiding, her curiosity evident. Before Frank could respond, there was a sudden knock at the door. Moments later, several men dressed in black, their faces concealed by masks, forced their way inside. Frank and Leo tried to fight back, but the intruders overpowered them. Within minutes, both were tied up, helpless and vulnerable, as the masked men loomed over them. The demands for her safe return were clear to hand over the only evidence capable of unveiling a major scandal and cover-up by French ministers, one that had ultimately led to the death of his former partner, Nico. Flashbacks reveal that Frank's late father had been a member of the GIGN as well. Assuming his father's role, Frank joins the force and is given his dad's police badge. Inscribed on it are the words, Ad Vitam. Frank and Leo's journey together began long before their current perilous situation. Their story started at GIGN, the elite training academy where they both honed their skills as agents. All members of GIN had planned a mission to apprehend the culprit, but Leo took a different approach. He negotiated with them, resolving the issue peacefully. In the end, his partners threw a party to celebrate, sharing plenty of funny moments, all thanks to Leo's successful negotiation. During one particularly intense training exercise, the two were paired together for a high-pressure simulation. The mission involved infiltrating a simulated enemy compound and retrieving sensitive information. But Frank just held her hand, and they resolved that issue in a good and trained manner. Over time, their professional partnership grew into something deeper. Late-night strategy sessions turned into conversations about their dreams and fears. Frank was drawn to Leo's fierce determination, while she admired his courage and unshakable optimism. Their love blossomed during a critical point in their training, a high-stakes survival exercise that required them to depend on each other completely. Together, they had decided not to have children, a choice Leo supported. However, Nico, always the voice of wisdom, told Leo that family provided strength and that they would be stronger with one. They were all happy, enjoying life together, until one night when Frank was with Ben, a hotel security guard, who told him he had heard gunshots from the upper floor and had already called the police. Frank, seeking only information, decided to go there. By the time they arrived, the situation had escalated into a full shootout as attackers stormed the building. In the chaos, Nico was shot in the neck and died on the spot. After Nico's death, the GIGN dismissed Frank, holding him responsible for putting the team in danger. Leo also decided to leave the force, and Ben, severely injured, was offered an office job, an offer he refused, choosing instead to leave the GIGN as well. While reflecting on the events, Frank noticed a bloodstain on his father's old badge, the one he had worn at the hotel that night. He had it DNA tested, and the results confirmed his suspicions. The men they faced were not ordinary criminals, as the GIGN had insisted. In fact, they were high-ranking government moles. Ben asked Frank to keep that secret and hide that DNA report. Frank was devastated, feeling as though his presence had caused the tragedy. Nico's pregnant wife was equally crushed by the loss, struggling to hold her family together, especially since one of their sons refused to even look at Frank. During a birthday gathering, that son confronted Frank, asking if he knew the truth behind his father's death. Frank, filled with guilt, had no choice but to admit the truth in front of everyone, and the weight of that confession made him feel even more responsible for the loss. Determined to uncover the truth, Frank decided to speak with a reporter about the secret. He asked her to keep the information discreet, urging her not to put her family in danger. However, the attackers were already aware of his intentions. They planned a team to track down the report and eliminate both Frank and his wife, as well as Leo, to silence any threats to their operation. After Leo was kidnapped, Frank was left with a devastating ultimatum. The kidnappers, led by Victor, demanded that he hand over all the evidence against them in exchange for her life. They gave Frank a mere 4 hours to find the evidence, making his task even more urgent. To ensure he followed through, they left Frank with a cruel reminder of their power. The police were already at Frank's house, investigating, and Frank knew he had no time to waste. In a desperate rush, Frank climbed onto the rooftops, trying to get to the key and collect all the evidence before the police closed in on him. Nevertheless, as he made his way through the city, the police spotted him, and he had no choice but to flee. He ran through the streets and made his way to Ben, desperate to share the truth about Leo's kidnapping. Ben listened carefully and then quickly made a plan. He created a fake badge and report and handed Frank a tracker. Frank hesitated but knew he had no other choice. He walked the rest of the way, knowing the danger that lay ahead. When he reached the location, they frisked him and tied him up. Victor, standing coldly nearby, demanded the badge. Frank refused, instead insisting he needed to see his wife first. After a tense moment, Victor agreed and Frank was led to Leo, who was unharmed but clearly terrified. Victor's cold voice rang out again, asking for the badge. Frank replied that the badge was under the seat of the bike. Victor sent one of his men to check, and soon enough, the badge was in his hands. Satisfied, Victor issued a chilling order for Frank and Leo to be executed. Just as the attackers closed in on them, Ben appeared from the shadows. He quickly took down the assailants and freed Frank and Leo, cutting through their restraints. Guns were handed over, and a violent fight ensued. With no time to waste, the trio fought their way to a nearby car, determined to escape the ambush. They sped off through the city streets, their hearts racing, knowing the danger was not over yet. The battle was not won, but they had one goal in mind: to get out alive and bring Victor and his men to justice. Frank, seeing the severity of the situation, made a quick decision. He told Ben to take Leo to the hospital, promising to deal with Victor. Meanwhile, Frank turned his attention to Victor, who was closing in on him. In the chaos of their fight, Victor killed 2 bikers who had been aiding him, showing just how ruthless he was. Frank, using the distraction, made a break for it. He ran toward the nearest bike and started it, speeding away as fast as he could. Victor was not far behind, chasing him on his own bike. They raced through the dense forest, but as they emerged from the trees, they were met by the flashing lights of the police. Frank's heart raced, but he did not stop. He swerved, narrowly avoiding the law enforcement, and made his way toward the open fields ahead. In a final effort to escape, Frank found a paraglider, soaring through the air and into the wide open fields below. The police could not follow him, and Victor was left in the dust, his pursuit momentarily halted. But even in this brief moment of escape, things were far from over. Frank's focus shifted as he realized Leo, his pregnant wife, had been shot during the chaos. The intense chase continued, taking them from the Rambouillet forest to Versailles and finally into the heart of Paris. The once clear goal of taking down Victor and exposing the scandal faded as Frank's thoughts turned solely to Leo. He rushed her to the nearest hospital. However, there was no time to rest. Leo was going into labor. The National Gendarmerie Intervention Group, the very tactical police force he had once belonged to, took Frank into custody. He was accused of being a government mole and was thrown into prison, facing charges that seemed to stack up against him. Meanwhile, Leo had just given birth to a baby girl. Despite everything that had happened, she had kept a vital secret throughout the entire ordeal. While under constant threat, she had hidden the key that could access the evidence. Evidence that could not only clear Frank's name, but also expose the criminal activities the French government had been desperately trying to cover up. The evidence Leo had protected revealed the full extent of the government's cover-up and their efforts to silence Frank. With this revelation, the conspiracy unraveled, and Frank's name was cleared. Together, Frank and Leo fought against overwhelming odds, and in the end, their love and commitment to justice